BSSS Rhythm. BSSS Rhythm. BSSS Rhythm.
BSSS Rhythm the इंटरनेशनल ऑनलाइन रेडियो पर मैं हूँ आरजे मुस्कान और आज हमारे साथ स्टूडियो में मौजूद हैं एक बेहद ही स्पेशल गेस्ट। मैं बात कर रही हूँ डॉक्टर पल्लवी जैन गोविल की, जो कि है प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स एंड SC वेलफेयर। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैम, इट्स रियली अ प्लेजर टू हैव यू amidst us in the studio.
Thank you so much, and a big hello to all your listeners.
Thank you so much, ma'am. To begin with, first of all, I'm really excited about this interaction that we're gonna, have amidst us. The very first thing that comes into my mind is, what about your education days? Like, how about your schooling, your grad days, your post-grad days? Because everybody who's viewing this or listening to us will surely be interested about knowing about you in great detail. So why not start from those days, the older days? How were they, and where did you pursue your education from?
Right. So, Muskan, first of all, what a lovely name. So, starting the morning with Muskan, the wonderful morning today. So, my early education was, my father was working for the United Nations, and so accompanying my parents various parts of the world. So, my initial education started in Sierra Leone in Africa, and then I did my primary education in Iraq, Baghdad, and then Afghanistan, Kabul. So, and then finally I came back to India. And then middle school and high school was in New Delhi, and my masters, and then I did my undergrad and grad school in Delhi. So Delhi School of Social Work, I did my masters, and I was doing my MPhil when I got through the services. So then I worked for some time in the government, and then I took some leave, and then went on to do my second masters in public policy from Princeton University in the US. And then I went on to do my MPhil and then PhD again from New York in public finance. So I've done a lot of padhai.
It clearly indicates that you definitely had a thing for, academics.
I did. So academics was really my first love.
Right.
And then I got into the services because the UPSC and the IS was like a cool thing to do, and everybody was studying. So I thought, okay, let me give it a try. So I really got in the service, not really very well knowing, what the service means. So I grew into the service from a youngster. And the academic background has actually helped me a lot because I keep reading about, public service, delivery, and what the world is doing.
Exactly.
And that really helps you to understand what everybody is seeing as a good strategy, and how you should improve your work performance, how you should assess and evaluate your own work.
Absolutely.
So it's been a good ride so far.
Right. I totally, agree with you on that. Also, as you told about how you got into the civil services, where did that exact motivation come from to get into the civil services?
I think it's twofold. One was my own family, my father and my mother. They both had, my father was virtually, in social work. So his specialization was community development. So there was a lot of conversation in the house on development issues and how progress depends on how everybody should equally have chances of development.
Absolutely.
So that sort of setting in the mind was there. And then when you're in Delhi University and a lot of people are preparing for the civil services, so that peer group motivation and support, so that makes you also sort of think, okay, yes, if this is a good job, we should try for it and try hard. So I think both the things worked well.
Why not?
So.
Also, ma'am, like you talked about the ambience in your family, what do you feel? Like, what role does, your surroundings, your peer group, or the ambience that you are in plays in shaping you as a person and going ahead in life with a particular, like choosing a particular profession? What role does that play? What do you think?
A lot. So, in modern parlance, in sociology studies, it's also called privilege. It's also called social conditioning. So, where you come from, the background that you have, the atmosphere you've been exposed to, the milieu in which you've grown up, really helps you get a head start.
Right.
And I think that is a large part, has contributed to what can be said,
Right.
success or achievements.
Right.
And that actually is a very important question you've asked, Muskan. Let me tell you why. In public service, in the administration, we work amongst less privileged classes.
Right,
So
right.
one has to be keenly aware that the reason that they are less developed, so to speak,
Right.
is not because they are any less in terms of intellect
Exactly,
or human
that is the
capacities. It's because they haven't got that opportunity,
right,
that same
right.
head start that perhaps I did.
Exactly.
So one has to work towards giving them a level playing field, so that
Right.
that privilege which they haven't denied,
Absolutely.
is also theirs by right. It's not
Right.
mine by right. I was just lucky to get
Exactly.
into it.
Exactly.
So that's the kind of thought process that as public servants we must always remember.
Right. I completely resonate with you on that. Now, I think we shall definitely talk about your postings. Where all have you been posted? What do you have to say about your, postings? Because being in bureaucracy, it always comes with a lot of, exposure of different cultures, different states, different cities. So, how did that go for you?
Right. So, as I mentioned, that I'm a Delhi girl with a lot of my education in Delhi
Right.
and my college in Delhi.
Right.
So when I came to Madhya Pradesh, really, it was a kind of a shock for me.
Okay.
Somewhat pleasant, somewhat not so pleasant.
Okay.
The not so pleasant part was that I had not been exposed to poverty of this level, this lack of education
Right.
and lack of infrastructure. Those days when I joined
Exactly.
the service in 1994
Right.
and I came to the state in 96, I saw that the lack of physical infrastructure, roads, schools,
Right.
hospitals, that was actually an eye-opener for me.
Right.
It's okay to read about it in terms of academics, theoretics,
Right.
figures,
Right.
but when it comes to actual on the ground, when you see that children struggle to find a school near to them,
Right.
families struggle to get medical help,
Definitely.
there are very little work opportunities, that is actually quite shocking. On the other hand, the simplicity of the people, the simple
Right.
lifestyle,
Right.
the clean air,
Right.
lack of noise pollution, that was very pleasant.
Right.
So it was a mixed thing, seeing the birds in the sky, blue skies,
Right.
forests. So I was posted initially as a officer trainee in Dhar and then
Okay.
in Khargon. And so that was a very pleasant experience. My first SDM posting was in Shujalpur.
Okay.
Shujalpur is very famous for its Anaj Mandi, the grain market.
Okay.
And it's a very fertile area. And so I learned about how the agricultural markets operate and the issues that farmers face and how we can motivate them and give them the sort of right inputs that they need for
Right,
prosperous
right.
agriculture. And then I was lucky to be posted as the CEO Zilla Panchayat in Bastar.
Okay.
So in the undivided Madhya Pradesh,
Right,
Bastar
right.
was a district with 32 blocks
Okay.
those days. Now the old Bastar has been carved up into 9 districts.
Okay.
And I was alone with my son, and
Right.
my husband was posted in another district. So Bastar was a dream posting because that's
Right.
as tribal as you can get.
Right.
The tribal community. There are it'll be an interesting thing to know that the entire country has there's a map
Okay.
which has been made by the Surveyor General of India. So the Surveyor
Okay.
General's office, which is in Dehradun,
Right.
since the British days, surveys were undertaken. The land was surveyed, topographical sheets were made. Bastar has an area called Abujmar, which remained for the longest time the unsurveyed area of India.
Okay.
So and Abuj Mar
Right.
meaning hill, and Abuj meaning not known.
Okay.
So there is a vast tract of land in Bastar which has not been surveyed.
Right. Right.
So it is inhabited by many tribal communities. There are no roads, so to reach them you have to go walking on foot,
Exactly.
halt in some village in the
Right.
night. And I had a 6-month-old son, so I used to just take him, on my back, or
Right.
with a domestic helper who used to help me carry him,
Right,
and we used to
right.
go for these long treks to villages.
Right.
That was a real learning experience.
Absolutely. So this really speaks of the, great exposure that you have
Yeah.
had in MP. Also talking about, your deputation. You were sent on deputation to Delhi. So वो experience आपके लिए कैसा रहा?
So बस्तर सीओ के बाद में मैं मंडला में सीओ जिला पंचायत रही. So Mandla is also tribal district.
Okay.
And I was there for 3 years. My younger son was born in Mandla.
Okay.
Because I thought that I don't want to go to Delhi or to a big city for my delivery. I will go.
Right.
I'll deliver my son where everybody else over here.
Right.
That was a learning, because that time I saw firsthand the issues of medical facilities and the lack of
Right.
medical facilities in small districts.
Right.
Then I went to study for some time. So I did my master's in the US and then my PhD in the US. I came back to the state and then I was called to the Prime Minister's office in Delhi.
Okay.
And I was lucky to have spent 5 years in the Prime Minister's office. And that was a great learning experience, because Delhi में जाके जो Prime Minister's office है वहाँ पे I was a young director. So
Right.
that's a fairly junior kind of a position in the IAS hierarchy.
Right.
But that's the place where you learn a lot, because
Exactly.
आपको सारे जो आपको मिनिस्ट्री असाइंड हैं
Right.
उनके पॉलिसी ब्रीफ्स पढ़ने पड़ते हैं.
Right.
उस पॉलिसी ब्रीफ में आपको उसके बाद ब्रीफिंग नोट्स बनाते हैं हम
जी.
अपने जॉइंट सेक्रेटरीज एंड प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर के लिए.
Right.
उसमें अच्छा ये लगता है कि जो आपने ब्रीफ बनाया है
जी.
वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर के पास जा रहा है, वो खुद उसको पढ़ रहे हैं.
Right.
आपने जो उनके स्पीच के लिए कुछ पैराग्राफ्स लिख के दिए हैं
जी.
वो एक्चुअली उनको उन्हीं पैराग्राफ्स को बोल रहे हैं.
बिल्कुल.
So, there's a sense of pride. There's also a lot of learning, because you learn the vast country that is India.
Right.
और जो पॉलिसी बन के किसी एक सेक्शन के लिए ठीक है, हो सकता है
जी.
कि वो दूसरे सेक्शन के लिए उतने उपयुक्त ना हो.
Right.
So how policy making at the national level
जी.
has to be sensitive and informed
Right.
to the concerns of
Right.
various stakeholders across the country.
Right.
And how that policy has to have a lens of benefiting the least,
Right. Right.
not benefit for the topmost person but benefit for all. So that is the kind of thing that you learn in Delhi, and that was a very, very good experience.
Right. Which were the ministries that you were handling, like looking?
Yeah, so I was given a very interesting charge because of my
Okay.
background in public finance and economics.
Right.
The biggest charge which I had was the Ministry of Finance and the
Okay,
Ministry
wow.
of Commerce and
Right.
Industrial Development. So Commerce and Industries was a huge charge. And apart from that, I had Ministry of Heavy Industries, Statistics and Program Implementation.
Okay.
And then I also had for some time Women and Child Development and Rural Development
Right.
and Land Affairs. So the Land Acquisition Act. So what is also very interesting in that charge is that you're working on various laws.
Right.
And when various acts are passed, so when the bill is
Right,
made, so
right.
draft bill comes to you, you read it, you question it, you understand what the bill has, how is it different from the previous law, and what does it seek to do, and how well does it do that.
जी.
So that and finance may interestingly, when there was a change in finance ministers,
Right.
and the prime minister held the charge of finance minister also for some time.
Right.
That time I was made the OSD to the prime minister
Okay.
/ finance minister.
Okay.
Those days I was sleeping in office also on some days. There was so much work to do,
Right.
so much to read and process.
Right.
But that was really, a good learning experience.
Absolutely. I am really sure that acted as a wonderful exposure for you. Now talking about the health department that you worked in for MP, you were previously in the health department. So how was that experience for you, and how do you see health facilities in Madhya Pradesh?
Okay. So when I came back to Madhya Pradesh in
Right.
2016, I requested the state government that if they, so deem it fit,
Right.
I would like to now work in a social sector, because I've worked in finance
Right.
before that. And very graciously, the chief minister, he appointed me as the health commissioner.
Right.
And I was in that position for more than 2 years.
Okay.
And then thereafter, I was elevated to the principal secretary in the same department.
Right.
And so these were again a learning experience.
Definitely.
Because I had done health economics as a part of my PhD.
Right.
So I knew the theoretical academic issues of healthcare and
Right.
healthcare delivery. But that's useful. But when you face real world health problems, that's an
Right.
entirely different ball game
Absolutely.
altogether.
On ground things are definitely
Absolutely.
different.
And so
Right.
you learn, that so much work needs to be done.
Right.
Madhya Pradesh has been doing improving in all its indices of infant mortality, maternal mortality,
Right.
child mortality, sex ratio, but we are still at the bottom of the pile in the country.
Right.
So it is so, so you need to understand what have we been doing right,
Right.
what have we been doing wrong, what do we need to do to make it better.
Exactly.
So that's a constant struggle, and then I saw the need for health infrastructure,
Right.
how people struggle to find a health facility,
Right.
the lack of doctors and nurses and other health
Right.
delivery personnel, the paramedical staff,
Right.
which we have so many positions vacant. And then we understood the problem of logistics, medicines,
Okay.
and machinery, diagnostic equipment. All these were areas where a lot of work had to be done.
Right.
And then the lack of funds, because eventually a new hospital needs money.
Ji. Bilkul.
So the question you need to ask is, where is the money?
Right.
So slowly and steadily, every year the state government agreed. We used to make a project that we want to reform medicine supply,
Right.
and we need more money to our corporation. We had a medical corporation, and we streamlined its work so that everything is online.
Right,
So we
right.
used digital platforms to manage for the logistics in medicines,
Right.
and we developed a vaccinations network, the
Okay.
EVEN platform, which has
Right.
come in so useful these days because of
Absolutely.
the vaccine storage
Yeah.
and facilities for COVID vaccines.
Right.
That infrastructure that we built has been really path breaking. We got national awards for that.
Okay.
And then we did a whole office automation system.
Okay.
Again, we were recognized nationally for that.
Right.
That how we were able to make sure that beneficiaries, so for example, if a pregnant woman
Right.
has to get money from the government for delivery, for institutional delivery, for coming to the
Okay.
hospital and getting a delivery,
Right.
she's paid a certain amount of money.
Okay.
If I remember the figures right, 1400 rupees in the rural areas and 1100 rupees in the urban areas.
Urban areas, right.
That money should be given to her promptly. So we have to
Right.
develop a system in which when she
Exactly.
comes for delivery, she gets the money.
Yeah. No. Without any delay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the government launched another scheme called Sambal, in which labor class women, they
Right.
get 12,600 rupees in addition.
Right.
And then the Food Securities Act also has the Matrabandhana Yojana, in which
Okay.
women for the first delivery get 4,000 rupees.
Okay.
So this money should reach the right recipient at the right time.
Right. Right.
And then, so I can talk all day, so I'll try to keep it, just focus on the few things.
Right.
We also have very high infant mortality.
Right.
And so for infant mortality, what we need is very good high-tech facilities in hospitals where we can save the
Definitely.
babies, where we
Yeah.
can, nurture them till they become of that age when they can go back to their families.
Right.
So developing those sick newborn care units
Right.
and pediatric ICUs,
Right.
that was a big work done. And then in Madhya Pradesh, we have tracts of severely acute malnourished children.
Okay. Yes.
So we have these nutrition centers
Right.
in the hospitals
Okay.
where a SAM child, so it's
Okay.
called SAM, severe acute malnourished,
Okay.
can be brought in and admitted for 15 days along with the mother
Okay.
to take care of
Right,
the child.
right,
And the child is given a very sort of medically apportioned diet
Okay.
so that the child's intake can increase steadily,
right.
and the child can even absorb the nutrients.
Exactly.
So those SAM care centers. And then we ran mass immunization programs.
Okay.
And we ran mass programs for identification of SAM children.
Right.
Something called Dastak, which is
Okay.
the health staff, ASHA and ANM workers went to every household to identify health problems, especially
Right.
of women and children,
Right.
and bringing them to health facilities.
Right. Right.
So all of these have actually helped me understand
Right.
the problems that people undergo. In Madhya Pradesh, the out-of-pocket expenditures
Right.
are quite high in healthcare. So the recent COVID pandemic,
Right.
it brought to light, it brought to center stage the problems of healthcare facilities and
Right.
infrastructure, but it also gave us the opportunity to ramp up these facilities.
Exactly.
And I must say that the government has done a rather good job
Right.
of increasing these facilities.
Facilities. Right.
So people get, in the future, a better, response.
Right.
The Ayushman Bharat Yojana again
Right.
is a fantastic scheme
Right.
which the government launched, in which people had access to high quality care
Right.
paid by the government, by the
Right,
poor people.
right.
So Madhya Pradesh has done rather well in that as well, to empanel big hospitals,
Right.
to build a system in which when a poor person comes, they can get identified and get cashless treatment for their
Right, right.
illness. So that has also been quite good work that we were able to do in this short time.
Right.
So it's been a great experience.
I am really sure about that. Also, ma'am, now that you are into the tribal welfare department, the SC welfare department, what problems do you really identify with the tribal people that they are actually going through? To name a few, I think child marriages has been one. So how do you see this particular problem? And what has the government really done to curb the issue?
The tribal communities
Right.
are spread over 20 districts in Madhya Pradesh,
Right.
and there are very few. There are tribal communities in others as well, but lesser in numbers.
Right, MP has the
Biggest,
biggest population
of tribals in the
people,
country. 1.53 crores was the 2011
Right,
figures.
right.
And the new census will be underway soon.
Right.
So we'll get to know how many actually are we.
Right.
So in terms of health indicators, except for sex ratio at birth,
Right,
which
right.
is the number of girls and boys ka
Boys,
ratio
right.
at birth,
Right.
in which tribal communities are better than the
Better
rest.
than- yeah, exactly.
Because they are very
That is
egalitarian,
something-
they don't have
right.
that boy-girl divide.
Right.
Other indicators like infant mortality, maternal mortality are very
Right.
high.
Right, right.
And so therefore there's this dichotomy that while the society is egalitarian,
Right.
but the outcome in terms of longevity of life, in terms
Right.
of disability adjusted life days, life
Right.
years, is not conducive to the tribal
Right.
populations. And the reasons are many. Number one is the fact that tribal communities live in rather inaccessible
Right,
habitations,
right.
small habitations spread out over the rural
Right.
areas. So it's hard to get them the access to
Right.
schools, to education,
Absolutely.
and to livelihood
Exactly.
opportunities. Unlike the way in which a city dweller gets them,
Right,
all
right.
in a geographical compact
Right.
area. So that is one challenge that you face, which is to get them access.
Right.
And once they have access, to be able to make them see value in what they are doing. That is the
Exactly.
second challenge. So what you mentioned about early age at marriage, what has been proven is in research studies across the world that the
Right.
most successful strategy in increasing the age of marriage for girls
Right.
and in increasing the age at which the woman has the first child,
Right.
in increasing spacing between children,
Right.
in decreasing the number of children a woman has,
Right.
what is the most important thing that is the biggest input that one can give? Take a guess.
Uh,
Education.
Education, definitely. Literacy
Years
is
of
something.
education. So
Right.
literacy and then education, years of education.
Right.
So if we are able to increase the retention of girls in schools all the
Right,
way up to grade
right.
12,
Exactly.
and then we are able to get her to college,
Right.
we will see that over the years, as education spreads,
Right.
women have agency over their own lives,
Exactly. That's
and
something
that
really important.
reduces age at marriage. So in my own humble experience,
Right.
we do promotion campaigns की लड़की की शादी जल्दी मत करो,
Right.
इस उम्र में करो, पर काम क्या कर रहा है, what is
Exactly.
working, वो education है.
Right.
तो मध्य प्रदेश सरकार ने काफ़ी साल 10 साल हो गए लगभग
Okay.
एक नया इनिशिएटिव लॉन्च किया कॉल्ड कन्या शिक्षा परिसर.
Okay.
तो ट्राइबल एरियाज में रेजिडेंशियल स्कूल्स फॉर गर्ल चाइल्ड
Okay.
all the way up to grade 12.
Right. Right.
So these have been doing very well. And इस इनिशिएटिव के साथ में गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने भी फंड की एकलव्य विद्यालय, अगेन रेजिडेंशियल स्कूल्स,
Right.
fully equipped modern institutions on the lines of the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas and
Okay.
Kendriya Vidyalayas. So Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalay के पैटर्न पे एकलव्य schools have been started.
Okay.
And in मध्य प्रदेश हमारे 89 ट्राइबल ब्लॉक्स हैं
Right.
और इनमें लगभग आई थिंक 72 में हो गए हैं.
Right. Right.
Every year we get 4 or 5 new eklavya schools.
Right.
And these eklavya schools have half of them are already affiliated to CBSE.
Okay.
So the standards are extremely good.
Right. Right.
Their pass percentage is very good. This year, some of our Eklavya students got through JEE,
Wow.
NEET exams also.
Okay.
So I think these are going to be real game changers.
Right,
जितना हम शिक्षा बढ़ाएंगे
जी।
ट्राइबल एरियाज में, जितना हम शिक्षा बढ़ा के अवसर बढ़ाएंगे शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट एरियाज में,
जी।
वो अवसर उनको बच्चों को मिलेंगे जो सामान्य रूप से शहर के बच्चों को और अन्य प्रिविलेज क्लासेस के बच्चों को मिलते हैं. तो ये इन बच्चों में इतना हुनर है,
Right.
इतनी प्रतिभा है कि ये अपना आसमान खुद अपने आप छू लेंगे, पा लेंगे.
सही बात बोली है मैम आपने. आई टोटली अग्री विथ यू ऑन दैट. Also, we see there are these other problems like, migration among the, tribal communities. And the biggest reason which I can, cite out is lack of employment. So how do you see that, and how has the government worked in that context, like increasing employment for them, so that because we see there's this lack of industries in the tribal areas, because of which they are compelled to migrate from one place to the other. Also, I think that also results in their children not being able to be consistent with their education,
Right.
because they are constantly changing places. So even if they enroll themselves in some schools, they are not there for long. So
Right.
how do you see that, and what has the government done in that context?
So, great question, Muskan. Number one, it shows that you've done a lot of research before this talk, and I'm so happy about that. When you see young people who are so, attuned to the issues. So, rightly said that why migration, पलायन क्यों होता है tribal areas में? Lack of opportunities,
Right.
employment opportunities,
Right.
because nobody wants to leave their home and go,
Right.
it's because they aspire to better lives for their
Right.
families.
Right.
So, two things that are really helping. One is the महात्मा गांधी नेशनल रूरल एम्प्लॉयमेंट गारंटी प्रोग्राम.
Okay.
तो नरेगा के जो काम है उसमें व्यापक रूप से जब गांव-गांव में रोजगार मूलक काम खुलते हैं,
Right.
तो पीपल गेट एन अपॉर्चुनिटी कि वो वहीं अपने गांव में ही काम रोजगार ढूंढ लें
Right.
और उनको पलायन की जरूरत कम पड़े.
Right.
मध्य प्रदेश हैज बीन कॉन्स्टेंटली एंड कंसिस्टेंटली बीन ऑन टॉप इन द कंट्री
Okay.
in providing Narega employment,
Right.
100 days assured employment
Right.
to the villagers. And I think that has, to a certain extent, helped in the migration.
Right.
The other important thing is, and I'll come back to the livelihoods issue, but
Right.
one important strategy is कि बच्चों को education की continuity कैसे मिले, what you asked me. तो जब राइट टू एजुकेशन आया और प्राथमिक शालाएं हर जगह
Right.
खोली गई,
Right.
तो उस समय कॉन्शियस डिसीजन के साथ में ट्राइबल डिपार्टमेंट में आश्रम शालाएं चलती हैं.
Okay.
We run about more than 1,000 ashram schools,
Right.
which are basically residential primary schools, primary and middle schools.
Right.
तो ये प्राइमरी और मिडिल स्कूल्स को हमने चालू रखा, उनको
Okay.
चलते रहने दिया, क्योंकि इसमें जो पलायन वाले एरियाज हैं वहाँ पे परिवारों के बच्चे रह के पढ़ते हैं.
Right. Right.
तो ये ज़रूरत महसूस की गई कि हमको स्ट्रैटेजी रखनी है कि इन की पेरेंट्स सुरक्षित रूप से अपने बच्चों को हमारे पास छोड़ के जाएं
Right,
और बच्चों की शिक्षा डिसरप्ट ना हो.
Right.
So that is something which we plan to, which we are, aiming to make them ashram shalas better,
Right.
better learning places for children. And another, and one strategy linked to this ashram shalas, what we are now thinking of doing is कि हम ग्रीष्म अवकाश
Okay.
की जो concept है, summer vacation,
Right.
वो खत्म कर दें.
Okay.
Let it be summer vacation, yes,
Right.
but summer vacation in your institute, in the ashram shala, if you want to stay back.
Exactly.
And we give them that opportunity कि 2 महीने आपको हम ग्रीष्म अवकाश में भी हम बच्चे की देखभाल करेंगे.
Right.
Because never know where the family is. Are they back in the village or they are
not,
elsewhere?
yeah.
And I'll come back to the livelihood issue. So
Right.
after the education is taken care of and you have employment guarantee,
Right.
but you also need entrepreneurship development. You also need
Definitely.
vocational training.
That's important.
So that's also a very important part
Right.
that what the department does, which is
Right.
to encourage vocational training,
Right.
to give scholarships to students
Right.
in higher education,
Right.
and to promote students to go for higher education even abroad. We give
Right.
scholarships for that.
Right.
And to also link banks and other institutions for institutional entrepreneurial development
Right.
programs.
Right.
So that's also very, very important
Right.
to improve the opportunities in tribal areas.
Right. Also, ma'am, there's this very important thing that I would like you to talk about. If we talk about the women, the tribal women, we see that even though there is not that kind of a discrimination that we see in the normal, urban or rural societies, still we realize the fact that, for example, if a tribal woman wants to, take a loan from a financial institution, we know the fact that we need to have collateral security for that. But then we see that they do not have ownership of the lands. Mostly it's with the men. So how do you see this as a problem, and what can be done to empower the tribal women?
So let me start with an anecdote.
Okay.
When I was in Mandla district in the year, this was I think 2000,
Okay.
2001, we did a small study कि महिलाओं की लैंड में ओनरशिप कितनी है.
Right.
एंड ओनरशिप के डिटेल्स बहुत मुश्किल थे उस समय
Right,
बिकॉज वो
right.
डिजिटाइजेशन इतना नहीं था.
Right.
सो वी टुक डेटा ऑन वुमेन्स ट्रांजैक्शन जो प्रॉपर्टीज में होती हैं,
Right.
खरीद फरोख्त होती है,
Right.
उसमें कितने महिलाओं का ओनरशिप होता है.
Right.
एंड वी फाउंड दैट मिनिस्क्यूल 1% इन
Right.
ट्राइबल्स, 3% in generals.
Exactly.
Then we sent a proposal to the state government कि आप स्टैम्प ड्यूटी में कंसेशन दीजिए
Okay.
जब ट्रांसफर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी होती है.
Right.
Luckily, the state government took it up as a policy initiative.
Okay.
They saw the value in that
Right.
because it was a very well researched study of
Right.
Mandla district.
Right.
And that year itself, they announced a 2% concession in stamp duty. That was
Okay.
Madhya Pradesh was the first in India to do
Wow.
so. And that became a policy throughout many states because the
Right.
duties are state duties.
Right.
And that continues to this day, that women in the transfer of property are given concession if the
Okay.
property is being purchased in their name or
Right.
jointly in their name.
Right.
Also in government schemes, for example, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana,
Right.
the house is made in the name of the woman or
Okay.
jointly in the name of the woman. So
Right.
the name of the woman gets precedence.
Right.
So again, a very important scheme the government has launched, which is the Ahar Anudan Yojana.
Okay.
जो primitive tribal groups हैं हमारे, particularly vulnerable tribal groups,
Right.
the Begas, the Sahariyas,
Right.
and the Bhariyas
Right.
in Chindwara, in Patalkot.
Right.
इनकी महिलाओं को परिवार की हर महीने हम
Okay.
1,000 रुपये ट्रांसफर करते हैं थ्रू
Okay.
डायरेक्ट बैंक ट्रांसफर, डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर हम इनको करते
Okay.
हैं. This is also the name of women.
Right.
So slowly and steadily the aim of the government is to promote women's agency.
Exactly.
कि वो खुद अपने उनको मलकाना हक मिले,
Right.
जो वो काम करती हैं उसका उनको सही दाम मिले.
Right.
अगेन जो स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स योजना आई है, प्रधानमंत्री स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स योजना,
जी.
उसमें भी महिलाओं को प्रमुखता से 10,000 रुपीज़ के इंटरेस्ट फ्री लोन्स दिए जा रहे हैं.
Right.
गारंटीड लोन्स दिए जा रहे हैं. उसका मकसद भी ये है अगेन कि विमेन ओनरशिप डेवलप हो.
Right.
एंड अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोग्राम इज़ द लाइवलीहुड्स प्रोग्राम.
Okay.
तो जो रूरल लाइवलीहुड्स प्रोग्राम है, अभी मैं जस्ट 2 हफ्ते पहले कराहल में,
Okay.
श्योपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में कराहल है जहाँ पे जो सहरिया ट्राइब्स प्रोडोमिनेटली वहाँ निवास करते हैं,
Right.
मैं उनके काम को देख के आई हूँ. तो विमेन सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स,
Okay.
15 क्रेडिट ग्रुप्स,
Okay.
छोटी छोटी सेविंग से वो कैसे अपने आपस में लेन देन करके कैसे अपना ज़रूरतों को पूरा कर सकती हैं, और कैसे हम उनको ट्रेनिंग देकर और उनको हम नए नए व्यवसाय में जोड़ सकते हैं.
Right.
तो ऐसे अच्छी सक्सेस स्टोरीज मैंने देखी है वहाँ पे.
जी.
जो बड़ी पापड़ तो है ही, उसके अलावा साबुन है, वॉशिंग पाउडर है.
Okay.
एक महिला ने डीजे लगा लिया है कि जो शादियों में डीजे
Okay. Wow.
बजता है, वो बजता है, उसका शी रेंट्स इट आउट.
Okay.
So various kinds of value added
Right.
products in agriculture, सिलाई कढ़ाई, not just for stitching petticoats and
Right,
blouses,
right.
but for shirts, for
Okay.
high tech garments,
Right, right.
with quality control. So these are the works, and there are the farmers, producers,
Right.
organizations,
Right.
and federations
Right.
of women being formed at the district. So I think this is going to be revolutionary as time goes by.
I am really sure about that. I mean, that is something really, really interesting. And I must say we are on the right track, and the government is, doing everything to ensure that we, at least achieve some good results eventually. Also, ma'am, I would want you to talk about the malnutrition, the lack of hygiene that, the tribal communities face, and how they are eventually prone to, many diseases. So what is your take on that, and what is the government really doing to ensure that we, amend the conditions of those people?
मुस्कान, एक वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ जो लाइवलीहुड को भी इम्पैक्ट करती है और हेल्थ आउटकम्स को भी इम्पैक्ट करती है, वो ये है कि गवर्नमेंट अपने आप से नहीं कर सकती।
राइट।
तो हमें इसको बिल्कुल हमको अवेयर रहना चाहिए कि गवर्नमेंट की सीमा है, और जब तक कम्युनिटी इस पे ओनरशिप नहीं लेती है, और कम्युनिटी ओनरशिप कैसे आएगी? युवा young people have to be change makers. They have to understand कि गवर्नमेंट के लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज हैं, और गवर्नमेंट केवल एक फैसिलिटेटर का रोल कर सकती है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का रोल कर सकती है, लेकिन एक्चुअली तो जो टेकिंग द बुल बाय इट्स हॉर्न्स या अपने भविष्य को अपने हाथ में लेकर संवारना, इसके लिए हमको यूथ लीडरशिप को एनकरेज करना चाहिए। तो मुझे लगता है कि जो कम्युनिटी बेस्ड काम हम करते हैं, जिसमें हम कम्युनिटी लीडर्स को एनकरेज करते हैं, वो ही समाज में दिशा बदलेगी।
बिल्कुल।
तो हम अगर अपने युवाओं को, बच्चों को न्यूट्रिशन के बारे में जानकारी देते हैं, पैंडेमिक में जैसे अभी इन्फेक्शियस डिजीजेस आए हैं, उसके बारे में, उसके बचाव की जानकारी देते हैं, हम उनको न्यूट्रिशन की बताते हैं कि मैल न्यूट्रिशन को कैसे पहचानो, तो मुझे लगता है कि वो खुद अपने परिवारों में हमारे चेंज एजेंट्स बन के जाएंगे। बिकॉज एक सरकारी व्यक्ति को मोटिवेटेड रखना और उसकी ओनरशिप करना बहुत मुश्किल है, पर जो कम्युनिटी में रहता है खुद, जो कम्युनिटी की लड़की है, वो उनके परिवार है, उनको मोटिवेट करके अपने एजेंट्स बनाए। एंड जब आपने malnutrition की बात करी, तो I would take this opportunity to inform all the viewers and listeners today that sickle cell anemia is a very major problem in tribal communities of health in Madhya Pradesh. What that means is एक रक्त विकार, blood disorder है, genetic disorder है। उसमें क्या होता है कि जो ब्लड सेल होता है उसकी शेप एक सिकल की जैसी हो जाती है, और उससे अनीमिया और उससे लॉन्जिविटी ऑफ लाइफ बहुत कम हो जाती है। और अगर 2 सिकल सेल के मतलब लड़का लड़की, हस्बैंड वाइफ और उनका बच्चा जो होता है, उसकी संभावना सिकल सेल पेशेंट बनने की बढ़ जाती है। तो जेनेटिक डिसऑर्डर। तो अब सरकार ने एक सिकल सेल का एक मिशन भी अपने हाथ में लिया है, जिसमें वो सिकल सेल का प्रोजेक्ट लॉन्च करके और इसकी पहचान करना, इसके लिए काउंसलिंग करना कि भाई जब आप शादी करो तो आप अपने पहले खून की जांच करा लो, रिश्ता बनने से पहले, जिससे कि आपको ये मालूम हो कि भाई सिकल सेल की संभावना बच्चे में होगी या कम होगी या नहीं होगी या ज़्यादा होगी। एंड देन हम ऐसी मेडिसिन उपलब्ध कराएं जिससे कि हम उनकी जो बीमारी को कंट्रोल कर सकें। और हम काउंसलिंग और जेनेटिक कुछ टेक्निक्स हैं, आई थिंक इट्स लाइक विद बोन मैरो ट्रांसप्लांट एक्सेट्रा, इट कैन ऑल्सो बी कंट्रोल, इट कैन ऑल्सो बी अरेस्टेड। तो वो उसके ऊपर अब गवर्नमेंट काफ़ी ध्यान दे रही है। तो हम हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट के साथ मिलकर ट्राइबल डिपार्टमेंट इज एनकरेजिंग दैट।
Also, ma'am, we see, the tribal population of most of the states are, extremely rebellious. We see that, they are never in agreement with the governments that are, there. So, we also see this problem of insurgency, especially in the northeast, though it's not to that extent in our state. But what do you think? What really, compels them, or what really drives them to, rebel against the government and, express their concerns?
देखो मुस्कान, why does anybody rebel? या कोई बच्चा अपने परिवार में अपने माँ बाप पे गुस्सा क्यों होकर रिबेल क्यों करता है?
Because that person is, or that child is not satisfied with what he is being provided. Maybe
satisfied, or yeah, exactly, satisfied, not satisfied, and doesn't agree.
Exactly.
तो as government or as a part of the government, I'm not government, I'm just a small cog in the wheel. अगर मैं एक ह्यूमिलिटी के साथ अप्रोच करती हूँ लोगों को, और मैं उनसे समझना चाहती हूँ कि वहाँ समस्या क्या है, तो मेरा रिस्पॉन्स उनके अपेक्षाओं के अनुरूप होगा।
जी बिल्कुल।
अगर मैं अपने दिल्ली के विचार ला के सोचूं कि अरे ये तो ऐसा होना चाहिए है,
राइट,
उस पे लोगों की अपनापन, उसका अपनत्व, उसको ओनरशिप नहीं हो पाएगी,
Right.
बिकॉज दैट इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट विच इज नॉट व्हाट दे वांट।
एग्जैक्टली,
सो आई थिंक द in my view, in my humble opinion,
Right.
the mismatch is कि लोग क्या चाहते हैं
जी
और हम उनको क्या प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं और हमको क्या सेवाएं दे रहे हैं।
राइट,
अगर हम अपनी सेवाओं को जनता, सामान्य व्यक्ति के अपेक्षाओं के अनुरूप बनाएंगे,
राइट,
अगर हम उनसे सीख के उनकी आवश्यकताओं को
जी।
और उनकी ज़रूरतों को और जो गैप है उसको पाटने के क्या काम करेंगे,
जी
तो कोई भी व्यक्ति आपके अगेंस्ट नहीं होगा,
सही बात,
बल्कि आपको सहयोग करेगा।
राइट,
और ये बात मैंने बस्तर में देखी।
ओके,
जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि मैं बस्तर में थी,
जी।
और बस्तर जो है वो लेफ्ट विंग एक्सट्रीमिज्म से
Right.
भरपूरा है।
Right.
आपको कोई ऐसा महीना नहीं जाता होगा जब हमको बहुत दुखद समाचार पढ़ने को नहीं मिलते हैं।
राइट,
पर मेरा को संतोष इस बात का है कि हमने भरपूर मेहनत करी, काम किया,
राइट,
और उसका हमको रिस्पांस बहुत अच्छा मिला।
ओके,
गांव उस ज़माने में लाइवलीहुड मिशन से पहले एक एम्प्लॉयमेंट एश्योरेंस स्कीम हुआ करती थी।
जी,
हम लोगों ने स्कूल में, हेल्थ में काम किया, बिजली के ऊपर काम किया,
Okay.
और गांव वालों का बहुत सहयोग मिला, कोई
Right.
रिबेलियन नहीं था।
राइट,
तो मुझे लगता है कि दिस इज समथिंग विच वी शुड थिंक अबाउट कि
Absolutely.
गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट गवर्नमेंट, गवर्नमेंट इज बाय द पीपल, ऑफ द पीपल, फॉर द पीपल।
राइट,
सो उस भावना से हम काम करेंगे कि लोग
जी।
क्या चाहते हैं और उनकी भावना के अनुरूप हम काम करेंगे,
Right.
उनकी आवश्यकताओं के अनुरूप, और उनके जो उनके प्रतिनिधि हैं,
राइट,
जनता के जो चुने हुए प्रतिनिधि हैं,
Right.
वो भी उस जनता का अंग भी हैं, तो वो भी परस्पर ये उसका फीडबैक लेते रहे अपने
Exactly.
लोगों का कि वो
Right.
क्या चाहते हैं।
Right.
तो मुझे लगता है कि समस्याएं कम हो जाएंगी।
Okay, I am, really sure that the government will do things to ensure that problems like this get tackled. Also, I would want to talk about how difficult or how easy is it to, establish a coordination between the bureaucracy and the political setup, the political administration. Because, since the advent of bureaucracy, we see that not every time do we really see a well-established, communication or coordination between the two. And that, in a way affects what gets delivered. So how do you see it, and how is the condition regarding the same in Madhya Pradesh, our state?
So a lot gets written about the tensions between the bureaucracy and the elected
Right.
representatives.
Right.
But I think that is also a sign of aspirations.
Right.
The elected people, representatives, have aspirations to give development quickly.
Right.
And the bureaucracy is bound by the rules and laws which have been created
Right.
by the elected representatives. So I think mutual respect
Right.
and mutual accommodation is the way forward, and it always works in my experience.
Right.
And we have to be, as bureaucrats, we have to be aware that elected representatives are elected representatives.
Exactly.
So they are the prime people who are representing the voice of the people, which has to be respected.
Right.
Their aspirations have to be understood.
Right.
And if something is in contravention of the law, it has to be
Right.
explained to them. And if what they aspire for is legitimate
Right.
and is valuable,
Right.
then a conducive solution has to be found to achieve that, even if
Definitely.
it means changing the rule or law, insofar that it benefits people.
Right.
So this has to be a process of mutual respect and help.
Right.
In Madhya Pradesh, we are very lucky that number one, our chief minister, he is a very progressive, very liberal-minded, very accommodative person, and extremely polite and warm-hearted.
Right.
There's not a meeting which goes when you come out feeling that what a warm-hearted person he is and how dedicated he is to
Right.
the government. And I'm not saying it as a sycophantic. I'm not a sycophantic
Right,
person
right,
at all.
right, right.
It's a feeling of genuine interest in people's welfare that
Right.
you come out of. And that sets the tone for the entire bureaucracy as well as for his team of ministers
Right.
and
Cabinet.
and
Right.
cabinet. So the leadership is very important.
Absolutely.
And what tone do they set? So I
Right.
think we are very lucky in Madhya Pradesh that
Okay.
successive governments have always had a very conducive, very cordial
Right.
kind of a relationship.
Right.
So we are lucky to, and it's basically the people, because the
Right.
people over here are warm and welcoming, and supportive,
Right.
and that comes through in the elected representatives as well.
Absolutely. Also, ma'am, there's this really debatable topic, that is always a topic of discussion, the core of discussion, and that is reservations. And now that you are posted as the principal secretary in the Tribal Welfare Department, I think this really becomes an important topic that we should talk about. What is your take on reservations? Should it be there? Should it not be there? What is the relevance of reservation in the current scenario? Because, for years it has been there, but then with time we also see that the situations have been different. The times have changed. So, how relevant is reservations, the entire setup of reservations today, and how do you see it?
Muskan, when we started this conversation, remember we talked about privilege and coming
Right.
from a privileged background
Right.
and whether you have a level playing field.
Right.
So I see reservation in the broad context of affirmative action.
Right.
What is affirmative action? Affirmative action is like a public policy which is designed to increase the access to livelihood,
Right.
to entrepreneurship for everybody, and
Right.
especially those who have been less privileged.
Right.
Now, have we been able to, with 70 years of reservation, improve the lack of this gap in privilege and accessibility? Yes, we have been able to improve it.
Right.
Have we been able to give a level playing field? No.
No.
So till the gap
Right.
in people's aspirations and achievements is bridged,
Right.
how can we take away the facility which allows them to get a
Exactly.
leg up?
Exactly.
So that remains the question. It is
Right.
not as a person of not of a reserved category. I may
Right.
also feel that half half the jobs are gone. It's
Right.
not gone.
Right.
They are not gone. It's just that we have had privilege.
Right.
With our privilege, we have been able to make it better in the competition.
Right.
But understanding that there are those of us who are also our brothers and sisters
Exactly.
who need that support
Right.
to be able to partner with us in society.
Right.
And that gives a much more diverse society,
Right.
diverse workspace.
Right.
And I think that diversity is the beauty in India.
Exactly.
So why should we not promote this diversity?
Right. Right.
So in that sense, definitely I think affirmative action is a continued need,
Right.
and till we are able to attain the equal opportunities in
Right.
education and livelihood,
Right.
it will continue to be it's not an end in itself. It is a
Exactly,
path. It's
exactly.
a enabling condition which
Right.
allows somebody else
Right.
to also enter those vocations
Right.
with competition,
Right.
lesser competition, that because they would not be still able to compete with the people who come from really privileged backgrounds. So I think that sensitivity continues, and we must continue with that.
I definitely see a point in that. Also, ma'am, like we discussed, when we were talking about the cultural diversity that, these tribal communities have to offer. You also talked about GI tags. So, how do you see it, and how important is GI tagging to, in a way, save or, really let the tribal diversity, the cultural diversity continue for ages? How do you see that?
Great question. देखिए जो ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज़ हैं
जी.
ये क्योंकि नेचर के साथ में रहते हैं,
Right.
नेचर के मध्य में रहते हैं,
Right.
दे लिव विद इन द नेचुरल environments and the forests and the hills and with the rivers and with the flora and the fauna which is native to their place
Right.
of residence. They are also very gifted.
Right.
They are gifted in music, they are gifted in art,
Right.
they are gifted in dance,
Right.
and they have their own dance forms and art forms. और इनको हमने डॉक्यूमेंट तो बहुत सालों से किया है.
Right.
लेकिन इनको हमने एक लाइवलीहुड के साधन के रूप में नहीं देखा है.
Right.
तो धीरे धीरे दुनिया में ये समझ आ रही है
जी.
कि जो ट्राइबल आर्ट फॉर्म्स हैं,
Right.
अगर हम किसी रज़ा की पेंटिंग को या हुसैन की पेंटिंग को या जेमिनी के पेंटिंग को अगर हम इतना पैसा दे सकते हैं,
Right.
तो ये जो आर्टिस्ट ट्राइबल आर्टिस्ट ने इतनी पूरी कहानी गढ़ डाली है अपनी
Exactly.
पेंटिंग में, उसकी वैल्यू तो बहुत ज़्यादा है.
Right.
तो वो कैसे होगी,
जी।
उसकी तरफ हमने एक अभिनव पहल करी है
जी।
कि जीआई टैगिंग का।
ओके।
तो जैसे गोंड आर्ट है, डिंडोरी में पाया जाता है गोंड आर्ट,
Right.
इतना खूबसूरत है, आपको अब एयरपोर्ट से मिलेगा, आपको बड़े बड़े शहरों के में लोगों के परिधान में मिलेगा, बैग्स
जी।
पे मिलेगा एम्बॉस्ड,
Right.
लेकिन उसकी अपनी पहचान की डिंडोरी से बन के से निकला हुआ है,
Right.
वहाँ उत्पत्ति हुई है इसकी।
Right.
तो जो डिंडोरी में आर्टिस्ट है
जी।
उसको उसकी सही कीमत मिले,
राइट।
तो उसकी पहचान उससे हो,
Right.
उसकी तरफ हमने जीआई टैगिंग का एक ये इनिशिएटिव किया है।
Okay.
हमने ट्राइबल आर्ट फॉर्म्स एंड ट्राइबल प्रोडक्ट्स, जैसे अब प्रोडक्ट्स में उदाहरण के लिए everywhere it's become a food fad to have minor millets and rough
Right,
grains.
right.
So you'll find multigrain bread, you'll find
Yeah.
people eating quinoa and where is chia seeds,
Right.
kodo, kutki. What is kodo kutki? Kodo kutki is the natural मिलेट जो ट्राइबल अपने जगह पे उगाते थे,
Right.
उगाते हैं और खाते हैं।
Right.
घर में उसकी धुनाई करते हैं, कुटाई करते हैं
Okay.
और वो खाते हैं।
Right.
वो बहुत टेस्टी है और टेस्टी के साथ साथ बहुत न्यूट्रिशियस है।
ओके।
और उस पे से बहुत सारी हेल्थ की प्रॉब्लम्स जो होती हैं, जो मॉडर्न एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्ट्स जैसे कि राइस
Right.
और वीट से होती हैं, वो उसमें नहीं होती हैं।
ओके।
तो धीरे धीरे साइंटिस्ट्स और हेल्थ स्पेशलिस्ट्स का ध्यान इनके ऊपर गया
जी।
कि भाई ये तो लुप्त होती जा रही हैं
हाँ।
और ये तो वाकई में बहुत अच्छी हैं।
राइट।
सो नाउ वी आर ट्राइंग टू फोकस ऑन ब्रिंगिंग बैक
ओके।
these minor millets
Okay.
of the tribals, reintroducing them to the food
राइट।
and conserving and promoting them.
ओके।
तो वो भी उसके लिए भी हम जीआई टैग के ऊपर काम हम कर रहे हैं
Okay.
कि कोदो कुटकी जो नेटिव एरियाज हमारे ट्राइबल एरियाज में होता है,
जी।
उसको वो पहचान मिल सके
ओके।
और वो जो उनको उससे उचित कीमत मिलेगी, तो
Right.
नेचुरली उस उचित कीमत मिलने से वो उसको और ज़्यादा उगाने के लिए उनको
Right.
प्रोत्साहन मिलेगा।
Right.
इस दृष्टि में हम काम कर रहे हैं।
ओके।
सो
Also, ma'am, you talked about the Adi Rang program
Ah.
that has been launched.
Yes.
So, what do you really have to share with all our viewers and listeners regarding the same?
We are very happy to share with you कि the President of India, he came to a tribal program for the tribal communities in March this year, and he inaugurated the Adi Rang portal.
Right.
The Adi Rang portal is a very innovative and new thing which we have introduced, which is to provide a digital platform to the tribal artist, not just to showcase their talent, but to also have conduct classes in which they can teach the world community
Right.
their own art and
Right.
culture. So what we have done is that we have provided a platform
Okay.
in which a tribal artist sitting in their own village or
Okay.
in their own town
Right.
can run a virtual classroom,
Okay.
and anywhere in the world somebody sitting remotely can learn from them
Right.
and give them a small sum in recognition for their classroom for that
Right.
course.
Right.
And so it becomes a method of livelihood,
Right.
as well as promoting their culture, popularizing it,
Right.
and reaching a wider world audience.
Right.
So that is the Adi Rang portal, and we hope to expand into teaching music, selling their products.
Right.
So that is now in its initial phase. अभी launch किया है हमने, उसको
Okay.
consolidate कर रहे हैं.
जी.
But I'm sure it will take off in the near future, and we
Right.
get young energy with people like you, etc., to promote it.
Definitely.
Definitely it'll take off.
We really hope it really works for the people and we achieve tremendous results eventually. Ma'am, it was really a pleasure talking to you. I mean, you had so much to share. Your exposures really added immense charm to the the entire interaction. We got to know so many things about our very own state, the tribal communities, their specializations, the diversity. So we're really thankful to you. It was really a pleasure and privilege for me to have you on my show. And eventually, now that we are almost done with all the questions that we had for you, I would like to know your experience coming to BSSS Rhythm. How was all the discussion, and how do you see this as an experience?
Thank you so much, Muskan. I think the pleasure is all mine, and we've been planning to do this for a long time. And unfortunately,
Got
the
delayed.
pandemic,
Yeah.
came between us. So that's
Right.
hopefully it's all behind us, and
Right.
ईश्वर करे इंशाल्लाह कि वो कभी ना आए.
बिल्कुल.
So it was really nice, and there's so much to talk about. So to your
Right.
audience, I would like to say, आप भारत का दिल देखिए, मध्य प्रदेश आइए और ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज़ के बीच में आइए. बहुत आपको प्यार सम्मान मिलेगा, एंड
Right.
बहुत प्यारे लोग हैं हमारे. BSS में आके यहाँ का सुंदर कैंपस, और आज तो भोपाल इतना प्लेजेंट है, सुबह से
Right.
बारिश हो
The
रही
weather
है.
is really good, yeah.
So what a beautiful town we all live in.
Right.
And it's a city now, right? It's not a
Right.
town, I think. So it's lovely. It's a lovely morning. We don't even have air conditioning in this room, and it's still pleasant, right? So it's been great, and this initiative of the BSSS Rhythm, I think, is a wonderful initiative. We are reaching a great worldwide audience, and I hope a lot of people have tuned in today, not just to listen to me,
Right.
but for me to be able to persuade them
Right.
into what I have to tell them about
Exactly.
the
That is
tribal
important,
communities,
right.
and the work that the government does, and how you can be engaged
Right.
as young leaders,
Definitely.
and change makers with us. And thank you really for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and to talk to all the listeners today and be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. The pleasure was absolutely ours. Well, guys and girls, we're done with the show. I hope you all really enjoyed, and I'll be back soon with another guest. Till then, stay tuned with BSSS Rhythm, the international online radio. Thank you.
Namaste.
BSSS Rhythm. BSSS Rhythm. BSSS Rhythm.